Hey, and welcome back. Today we are going to have a full course on AutoGen Studio UI. That means we're going to go through all the features, go through a bunch of examples so that you feel comfortable with it after this video. This is a way of getting familiar with AutoGen without needing to write code. And even if you do want to write code, you can also just prototype and test things out quicker and easier with AutoGen Studio. We got a good bit to cover, so let's get started. Well, the first thing is let's create a new project in your IDE. So here I am in PyCharm Community Edition, which is a free download. I have a link in the description. Click new project, full course, hit enter, and now we're gonna get our environment set up. Now, once you're ready, you just open up your terminal, and in PyCharm, it is over here on the left-hand side where it says terminal, click that, and now we have our command line. All we need to do now is install AutoGen Studio. We do that by saying pip install AutoGen Studio. The only thing that's left is to run AutoGen Studio, so we have a local version up and running, and we can start playing around with it. We'll first clear this. We're just gonna say AutoGen Studio UI -- port. Then you can type in any port, just default, type in 8080. If it's already taken up by something on your machine, just type in 8081 or 8082, whatever one is free. And once that's done, you can see here it says Unicorn running on a local host. Click this and we'll open up AutoGen Studio. And here we are with our local AutoGen Studio UI up and running. Okay, so the first thing is let's just get familiar with the UI. Okay, at the top here, we have three different tabs. We have Playground, which is the one we're currently on. We have Build, then we also have Gallery. Let's start off with the build tab. And then over here, we have several sections. We have workflows, agents, models, and skills. What are these? Well, first off, the skills are like functions that we can create. This is actual Python code. So if you click on generate images, here they have a visual editor for you to write code on. So here we just have a generate and save images function that we can tell another agent to use whenever we want to run it. And if we get out of that, we also have our models. Okay, we have GPT-4, a preview version, and a Zephyr model by default here. We can also add models here by clicking this new model button, but if we open one up real quick, let's look at the preview. These are the parameters for the model. So we have the name of the model, the API key, which we would get from platform.openai, and insert that here. There's a base URL, there's an API type, version, and a description. We'll come back to this. And the next one is the agent. These are the actual agents that we're gonna have chat with each other. It comes with the primary assistant and a user proxy. Let's look at the primary assistant really quick. So we have the agent name, the description for the agent. You can have a slider for the number of auto replies. It's set to default by 8. You have an actual auto reply, so we can just type in ... and this would be the reply given. We have a human input node, which by default on an assistant agent is set to never, because the only person that can actually make a reply to what the LLM call is us, you or me, the user. So for an assistant agent, this is always never. We then have the system message. Then we have the model that we want to assign to this agent. There's now a temperature slider for variance in the model. And then here's where you can add the skills. So here they have generate images and find papers. So we can just cancel, get back out of that. And then lastly, we have the workflows. This is where we tie the agents together to have them work. You can create your own workflow up here by clicking new workflow. Let's look at an example once. Let's go to general agent workflow. And here we just give a workflow name. This is the description for it. And then we have the summary method, which defines how we want to summarize the LLM calls, right? So we can get the last message, get none, or you can get a summary of the whole conversation. And then we have the sender and the receiver. Okay, if you've ever written code with AutoGen, this is where we would say user proxy.initiate chat, and then we would give the primary assistant as the agent we want to send this message to. And we'll go through a quick example if you're not familiar with this in just a second. Now, how does all this tie in together? Like, how do we actually run this? Well, let's just go through a quick example. If you come over and click the playground tab, you see on the left-hand side, there's sessions. Well, a session is really a workflow. So if you click new, and you can see there's a drop down here, we only have two workflows, which we just saw. We have general agent and travel agent group chat workflow. But let's just click the general agent workflow, click create, and now we have a workflow ready. Now we're gonna have the user proxy send a message to the primary assistant. Well, they actually have examples down here, so let's just click one. Markdown. Oh, wait, API key is not present in the LLM config or OpenAI key environment variable. How do we fix that? Okay, I did this on purpose so that you'll know and you'll remember to do this from now on. But what we actually have to do is go back into our terminal and export an OpenAI API key and then run AutoGen Studio again. So all you have to do is type in export OpenAI underscore API underscore key equals, and then give your API key. And once you've done that, go ahead and run AutoGen Studio one more time. And now when you're back in AutoGen Studio, there is an ellipsis right here by the message. If you just click this, you can click retry. And as you can see here, it's now working. It's actually generating a response for us. And then once this is done, we're going to have all of the messages here. So you can see agent messages, there's a total of 3. It took 9 seconds. If you click this dropdown, we're asking the user proxy to the assistant to list out the top 5 rivers in Africa. And then the primary assistant came back, the LLM came back with a markdown table like we asked it. And then we just terminate. Okay, great. We got a simple example working. Now let's take a deeper dive into each of these sections and see if we get this running locally. All right, the next segment is just going over the gallery tab really quick. So if you click the gallery, it says view a collection of your AutoGen agent specifications and sessions. What in the world does that mean? Well, if we come back to Playground, go under your sessions here where we just started our general agent workflow. If you click this ellipses and then choose publish, it says session successfully published. Now, if we go back to the gallery tab, you can see that we have our general workflow and all of the messages that were created from that. Now, if we go back to the gallery, let's go back to the build tab and then let's create our own agent. So if you click on the agent section, let's click on the top right, new agent. We can give this a name as Python Assistant. The description will be Python Assistant. Just to mess around with the settings, let's change this down to 5. The auto reply will just be ... Again, because this is an assistant agent, the human input node is always never. We can keep the default system message, but let's say we don't want this model. We want to add a new model. Well, if you click this add here, right now we only have 3. So we'll save this, create a new model, and then come back. Now, for the temperature, let's just set this to 0.7. And then you can scroll down a little bit more. This one doesn't really need any skills, so let's click OK. Now, if we go to the model section, we can create our own model. So choose new model. Instead, we're going to use the 3.5 turbo model. And what you can do to test if your API key works, let me just give some dummy API key that I know doesn't work. There's a test model button here. So if we click test model, it's going to say error occurred because I provided an incorrect API key. Now, if I give the correct model and then choose test model again, it's going to say model tested successfully. So we can choose save. And now we have our 3.5 turbo model here. So if we go back to the agents, click on Python Assistant, we can scroll down here, get rid of this one, and then choose the 3.5 turbo model. And then we can choose OK. So now we have a new model, we have a new agent, and now let's go ahead and create a new workflow. So if you go down to the workflow section, let's choose new workflow. And you can see here, you can choose 2 agents or a group chat. Well, 2 agents is similar to the general agent workflow that we just used. It was a simple user proxy with a primary assistant. We just ask the LLM a question and it responds back to us. Let's create a group chat this time. So click group chat. So I just called it Python workflow. And then for the sender and the receiver, the sender is going to be the same. We're still going to use the user proxy. But for the receiver, as you can see, it defaults to a group chat assistant. Let's click this. And now what we have are the group chat agents here. We need to modify this, right? Because we now have a new agent. We don't want 2 primary assistants. You can delete one of those, click add, and then choose Python assistant. Now there are some different options here for the group chat. There's a speaker selection method. Auto means that AutoGen will determine who's next in line depending on the agents. We'll just go ahead and use that one for now. We can choose the name of the group chat. Group chat assistant is perfectly fine. We can modify the max number of consecutive auto replies. Just let's go down to 5. We don't have to worry about the auto reply. The human input mode is still never because these are LLM calls. The LLMs themselves don't have any human input mode. That's just for the user proxy agent. And for the system message, you are a helpful assistant skilled at coordinating a group of other assistants to solve a task, and coordinating is not spelled correctly. And then for the model, let's go ahead and just keep this here. And then for the temperature, let's move this up to 0.5. Okay. And we don't need any skills to add here. So now that we're done, we just click OK. On this screen, just click OK, and we have successfully created our Python workflow. Well, now we can go ahead and try to run this. So if we go back to the playground, we can create a new session, click new. Sometimes when you see this drop down, you might need to like choose the drop down and then click the same workflow, and then the create button will be enabled. So then just click create, and now we can start with our new workflow. Now we just need a message that we want to send to the group chat. All right, all I want to do is create 3 different Python functions. So I have those listed here, and then also make sure we check the code is correct. I'm going to go ahead and run this now. Okay, and we got our responses back from the group chat. If we click this drop down here, we can see that the user talked to the group chat. The user is going to first talk to the Python assistant, and then the Python assistant is then going to speak to the primary assistant, and here are the functions that it created. And it looks like that it even has checks for it. Also, something nice with AutoGen Studio is there's this little copy clipboard button here. You can click this and actually copy the code that was generated. And then if we scroll down, it just has a couple more messages and then we're done. And then again, we can publish this by clicking this ellipses on the workflow, choose publish. Then if you go to gallery, here we have the snapshot of the workflow. Okay, great. We created our own model, we created another agent, and we created a group chat. Now I'm going to show you something a little bit more advanced, and this actually does require some code. What we can actually do is download these workflows and then programmatically use them with AutoGen. Let's see how that works. All right, so how do we download this? Well, if you go to the Build tab and then go to the Workflow section, you can hover over any one of these workflows. So if you hover over Python workflow, there is a download button. Choose that, and it's going to download a JSON file. Now let's go back to our IDE, and let's go ahead and minimize the terminal. And under our directory that doesn't have anything right now, right click, choose new, and then create a new Python file. Let's just name it workflow. And now we have our new Python file. Now I'm going to copy some code in here, which I'll have this up in my GitHub, so you can certainly do this as well. Now let's briefly go over this. All I did was import an agent workflow config and an agent workflow manager. I load our JSON file, and then I give that to the agent workflow config, and then I create an agent workflow manager and pass in the config to this. All right, they're just kind of like passing a couple things in. And then finally, all we need to do is run that same workflow. So we'll give it a task here in the code and then just click run. And this will be the same as sending the message in the UI. So the first thing is let's import our JSON file. So all I did was copy it from my downloads folder. I'm going to right click in my directory, choose paste. And this is actually the workflow. We can already see a couple things from here. But if you're in my IDE or you have a different IDE, you can actually come here, choose this, and sort properties alphabetically. And now this actually looks like readable JSON. You can erase this, your JSON file here, and we want to actually put in the Python workflow file. So if you just start typing, it'll autofill for you. And then we need a new task. I just want to create a function that takes in a file and then counts how many characters it has. Okay, now we just need to run it. But first, I don't have any config list here, and I don't have any LLM config, right? That's all stored inside of the JSON file, except I still need to export my API key if I'm using OpenAI's API. Well, in order to do that, go to your terminal, and you can either split this terminal and then you can export it first, or if you're just gonna do what I'm gonna do, just so we can easily see this, I'm gonna go ahead and close this down. So you can hit Control C, it'll shut down. And then I'm gonna clear this. I'm gonna export my OpenAI API key again, clear that, and now run the workflow Python 5. So say Python 3 workflow.py, and now we can run this. And this is doing the same thing that we were doing in Studio UI. So if you run this and you happen to get this error still where it says incorrect API key provided, we exported it correctly. However, in the workflow, I just tested an API key that didn't actually work. So if you open up your Python workflow.json file, I'm glad this error happened so that you know what to do whenever, or if this happens to you, it saved the API key. Of course, you only see the asterisk, but this is definitely incorrect. So all you have to do, you can just come in here and replace that with null. Okay, so this was the config list API key for the Python assistant that we created in for the workflow in the UI. Now I already exported it, but now with that null, I can run this again and it should now work, right? I don't get the same error like we did before. And now it's going to create a function that takes in a file and then counts how many characters it has. So the Python assistant kind of gave an outline of what it's going to do. It has the Python code here, and it's still going to talk with the group chat. And this is how that works. You can take any workflow and then bring it down to code and also run it. And this is a good way of sharing workflows with each other. Now there's something that you probably are wondering if I was going to talk about, and how do I implement local open sourced LLMs to this so I don't have to pay ChatGPT any money? Well, I'm about to show you. And we're going to do that by using LM Studio. Okay, like I mentioned, with LM Studio, just go to lmstudio.ai, download the correct one for your machine, and then just run it and we'll get started. Okay, and now that we're here, you just need to download a model. So if you can scroll down here, if you're not really familiar with this, that's okay. So you can just scroll down and use a small model like Phi2. You'll see there'll be a download button here. So if you click download and then open this up, you can see it's now downloading the model for me. And once that's done, you just click this X button here, On the left-hand side, there's this double arrow for local server. If you just click that, and now we can load a model and run our own local server for our open source LLM. Once the model is done downloading, up here where it says select the model to load, just drop this down. You can now choose the Phi2 model or any other model that you want to use. You can certainly use any model. Then once that's done downloading, you simply hit start server right here, this big green button, and you're done. Okay, the only thing that we need to copy here is there's this base URL. Okay, there's a base URL property. You need to copy this. So it'll be the HTTP localhost version 1. So copy that. Go ahead and terminate your AutoGen Studio UI session because we have to export the base URL first. To do that with Control C, you're going to type in clear. And now we can say export base URL equals, and then the local host that we just copied from LM Studio. And then you can say export OpenAI API key and then say equals, and then you can give it whatever you want. You can just say sk-111, doesn't matter. Okay, and now we can run our Studio UI again. Remember AutoGen Studio UI -- port 8080, click enter, and then we can go back to the UI. Now we're not quite ready yet. We need to create the model. So go to the build tab and then go to the model section on the right hand side, choose the new model button. Now let's just name this local. Now you don't need to give an API key here, but on the base URL, just copy in that same local host. And then for the description, I'm just going to say LM Studio. And you can test the model if you want, or you can just hit save. So now that we have that created, we now need to create the agent for that model. So go to the agent section, click new agent on the right hand side. So we're just going to call this local assistant, same thing for the description. The auto reply will be ... The system message will stay the same. We're going to get rid of this model. And we're going to add the local model that we just created. Okay, and then we can click OK. And now for a workflow, we want to create another one. So you can create a new workflow, just 2 agents, local agent workflow. And then for the primary assistant, instead, we don't want the primary assistant. We can change this by at the bottom here, it says, or you can replace with an existing agent. Now you can't, you kind of have to go to another one. So we'll say primary assistant, and then we'll go back and say local assistant. And now we have the agent that we just created. So you'll click OK again. And now we'll go back to the playground tab. We're going to go to new, and this is going to be the local agent workflow, create. And all I'm going to ask is, what is the capital of France? And you can see that it's working here, right? And that we didn't get any errors. Now, you can check this again by going back to LM Studio, and it got the question, what is the capital of France? And now that it finished, it took 20 minutes and 22 seconds. The capital of France is Paris in a bash script. Perfect. And in case you're wondering, you can do a similar thing with Ollama, just the base URL will be different. All right, now for the last example, I want to show you how to use a skill to generate an image. So in the build tab, you go over to the skills section. You see we already have 2 skills, one for fetch profile and generate images. So let's open up the generate images. And this is a function that takes in a query, which is a natural language description of the image you want to be generated. And then by default, the size is going to be 1024 by 1024, and it's going to return a list of string, which is like the file path. We're going to generate with the DALL-E 2 model instead of the DALL-E 3, so it saves a little bit of cost. And then basically this returns the image URLs. Okay, so you just hit save. We need to make sure we have a model ready for that. So we'll just use the GPT-4 preview because we already added the API key here for it. Now we can go over to the agents, and now we need to create an image assistant. So go to new agent, and I'm going to name it image assistant. Same thing for the description. I just have a very generic system message. The model, that's fine. The temperature, let's just play around with this, go to 0.4. And now for the skills, we need to add the generate images. So once you click add, there are 2 skills from the dropdown. Just click generate images, add skill, and then click OK. Now let's create a simple workflow using this image assistant. So go down to workflow section, go on the right hand side, you can choose new workflow. We're just going to do 2 agents. This is going to be an image agent workflow. So I can just copy this down here. The sender, user proxy, that's going to stay the same. But for the receiver, we need to change that. So if you scroll down again, now here, sometimes like if I just click image assistant, you see it didn't actually change anything. So sometimes you have to come back down here, choose another assistant, and then go back and then choose image assistant again. And then now you can see that it's here. And we have the generate images skill here. Don't be fooled. This is, I know this is small and it might look like, oh wait, my skill didn't come here, but it did. You're fine. If you see this, you're okay. And now we have our image agent workflow. We can go to the playground. click new. But first, sometimes I get this error where I need to export my OpenAI API key from the terminal and then restart AutoGen Studio UI. And then once I open it back up, I'm good to go. So let's do that really quick. Open up your IDE again, go to the terminal. Once you see this, again, just Control C. This will stop the process. Type in clear to clear all that mess up. And then we just need to export our Open API AI key again. And once you've done that, run AutoGen Studio UI once more. And now let's have it generate something. Let's say generate an image of a dog running in the grass. Press enter, and now it's going to go through the process. All right, and it will work. We go to the agent messages. As the image assistant imported the generate and save images skill. Okay, it got the query, then put that query inside of the function. Just like I mentioned, that's the natural language query that we want to give it, and then it printed out the image file names. Yeah, look at that. That's so creepy. Why is that so red right there? Oh, the way, that's Dolly too. That's okay. Thank you for sticking with me through this course. I hope you learned something. We went all the way from just setting it up to being able to using skills to generate images and everything in between, including using local open sourced LLMs, which I know a lot of you want to use, including me, because I don't want to pay the GPT prices either. I'll come out the newsletter every Sunday at noon. You'll also find my GitHub in the description where you'll find this project. And if you want other services that can be created with AutoGen, click these links below. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.